I missed Keshavananda Prabhu. I think he left around 7 o'clock, did he? Nama Shreshtam Manumapi Sachiputram Atra Swarupam Rupam Tasakrajam Urparim Maturim Gostavatam Radhakundam Girivaram Maho Radhika Madhavasam Prapto Yasya Pratita Kripaya Shri Gurum Tam Natosmi Jai Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Maharaj Ki Jai. So we're reading from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Antya-lila, chapter 3, entitled The Glories of Srila Haridas Thakur, and towards the end of the chapter, it seems a few verses to go. The main pastimes, the two pastimes of Haridas Thakur concerning attempts at seduction, right? We've read those ones, where the prostitute is hired or engaged to go and tempt Haridas Thakur.
Two prostitutes.
Well,
We read about the
one.
second one yesterday.
Well, I'm not sure if the second one was a prostitute as such, but
I mean,
you mean when it's like Maya Devi herself? Yeah.
We're just reading that at the moment.
Yeah. But the first one was an actual working lady of the night under this fellow Ramachandra Khan, right? He was a pimp, essentially. Well, that was one of his jobs. A pimp is a man who manages prostitutes. And, I mean, to put it realistically, that's what he was. Amongst other things, he was a bit of a rogue, really. So he was the head man of the village, but he was running a prostitution racket and other kinds of questionable activities. So, as you would have read, he was disturbed by the fact that Haridas Thakur was living in his vicinity and receiving the respect of the people. So he thought, I will humiliate him, I'll expose him, and have him driven out. That was his attitude towards the devotees, rather than being welcoming as a host, as a head man. Kind of the opposite of Prataparudra Maharaj, who is absolutely honoured to have all the devotees in Jagannath Puri, to host them, to protect them, to supply their needs, to have them grace his kingdom. Whereas a smaller time landlord, Ramachandra Khan, was highly disturbed by the fact that a devotee was in his vicinity. It's like, get him out. What's he doing here? He's distracting attention from me. So he thought he'd get one of his working girls to go and seduce Haridas. So after 3 nights of trying, she herself was converted. So the conversion was the other way. Instead of him being converted into sensuality, she was converted to spirituality and became a great saint. And then later we hear, I think we've just finished now, how Maya Devi herself said comes to test Haridas when he's living in a cave on the banks of the Ganga. There's also a big, I don't think this story is in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, of a large snake living in the cave. Did you read about that? No. I think it's in Chaitanya Bhagavat.
Is there more known about that prostitute, who she was?
Well, she was one of the girls in the employ of Ramachandra Khan, who is the head man of the village. You mean as in, like, did she have like a spiritual identity in Vrindavan Leela?
No, more like...
I think the story is given not so much to highlight her, but to highlight Haridas Thakur, Haridas Thakur's spiritual influence, and how it transformed even a prostitute into a pure Vaishnavi, who then renounced everything, not just prostitution, but all material engagements, and took up chanting in that very hermitage, in that very kutir that Haridas Thakur was living in. He left and she took up residence there, worshipping the tulsi plant, chanting so many Harinam every day, living very austerely, shaved her head, and became a respected sadhvi, female sadhu. But I haven't read anywhere more of her. That's the story as we know it, which exhibits the spiritual powers of purificatory powers of association with the Vaishnava. It's a modern day story of the same caliber that we have of Narada Muni purifying Mrigauri the hunter. Right? Mrigauri was engaged as a reprobate is not even the word, but in degraded behavior, and through the influence of Narad, he becomes a saint. So just as that story was given and told by Mahaprabhu to Sanatana Goswami, this story is also related, just to exhibit the same spiritual powers of that association with the Vaishnava. A Shuddha Vaishnava can have. Again, when Mahaprabhu is talking to Rupa Sanatan, he quotes that. I mean, Krishna Bhakti Janma Mula Hoy Sadhu Sangha, Krishna Prema Teno Puna, Krishna Prema Janma Teno Puna Mukhya Anga. And the more famous one, Sadhu Sangha Sarva Shastra Hai, Lavamatra Sadhu Sangha Sarva Siddhi Hai. Sarva Shastra Kai, Lavamatra Sadhu Sangha Sarva Siddhi Hai. That even a small moments of real association with a real sadhu can give perfection. That was said by Mahaprabhu to either Rupa or Sanatan. Probably Rupa Goswami, I think, but I'm not exactly sure. So that's the glories of Haridas Thakur exhibited here. And then, but there's also another import to the pastime, is that we can see the devastating nature. So there's the purificatory lesson to be gleaned from the pastime. But there's also the lesson of the devastating effects of Vaishnava Aparad. What happens to Ramachandra Khan? He gets ruined. And one of the nuances here is not just the basic lesson of the devastating effect of Vaishnava Aparad, but also how Vaishnava Aparad can develop, and one initial mistake can lead to a second mistake of a more egregious nature, and then a third mistake, which is even worse. So it's like a negative progression. So this is what happens with Ramachandra Khan, is that we can see it happen in practical examples as well. Someone starts off with a common type of offence, and then there's a continuum of offence, and then before they know it, they're rejecting their own guru. So the offence becomes more and more egregious. So we read here, right, what happens with Ramachandra Khan is that one day Nityananda Prabhu and his party are passing through. Right? You read this? And they stay at the house of Ramachandra Khan. Right? And he doesn't host them properly. He insults them, tells them to go stay in the cowshed. He says, you guys can have the cowshed. And Nityananda Prabhu leaves. And that is again, first he insults Haridas Thakur, then he insults Nityananda Prabhu. And then the higher authorities come around because he's a criminal, right? He's a rogue. He's running a prostitution racket. So obviously he's not paying his taxes either. So they come around and do him for tax evasion. and kind of ruin him at the same time. And something very, like, they kind of desecrate the whole place by butchering a cow in the courtyard and having a meat feast for like 3 days non-stop, barbecuing this cow in this courtyard. So the whole thing is completely ruined. And he is driven out of town, bankrupted, humiliated. So that's another import of the story, of that Vaishnava Parad can go from of a certain category, and it can get worse and worse until the person has derailed themselves spiritually. I mean, not that an insult to Haridas Thakur is a mild kind of Vaishnava Parad. It's not, but the point is that Vaishnava Parad can perpetuate itself. One incident can lead to another. But then in the Chaitanya Bhagavat we have further pastimes of Haridas Thakur given, and they're very inspiring. We have the very poignant pastimes of Haridas Thakur's persecution at the hands of the Islamic authorities of the time, where he is persecuted and not just beaten, but publicly humiliated. So someone can be beaten as a punishment, physically hurt, and that can be bad enough. But if you really want to hurt someone, then you try and hurt them physically and emotionally, right? That's what the whole idea behind public punishment is. You take someone out, strip them naked, beat them black and blue. Everyone's throwing eggs at them. It's kind of, okay, what's worse? Is it being beaten, or is it being publicly humiliated and degraded? The mental humiliation is often worse, right? Mm-hmm. Emotional pain is worse than physical pain, actually. So that's what any sadistic tormentor will do. If they want to punish someone, they'll hurt them physically, but they'll try and publicly shame them as well. So that's what was done to Haridas Thakur. They took him and they beat him in what is said to be 21 different marketplaces, dragging him around, beating him in village. When it says marketplaces, it means village squares, kind of like where they hold the market, the center of town. So they take him around and they're beating him in 21 different marketplaces. And 21 marketplaces, and publicly abusing him, publicly shaming him, and trying to break him. The intent actually was to murder him, to beat him to death. And the Muslim authority had said to his punishers, the guys administering the punishment, that if you don't kill him, then you will be paying with your own lives. He said, if you don't kill him, beat him to death, then you will be executed. But the problem is that Haridas Thakur wasn't dying. He was beating them. He was being beaten with his canes, dragged from village to village, beaten publicly in front of everyone, but he wasn't dying. And so after going around 21 different villages, this whole district, they're exhausted. And they plead with him, please, can you just die? We don't want to die ourselves, so please just die and put us out of our misery. He's the guy being beaten, and they're begging him for mercy. Please die. And so he dies. And then they take his body and they hiff it in the Ganges. And he floats down the Ganges and re-enters. Life comes back into his body. And it's due to that Haridas Thakur is seen as Prahlad Maharaj in Gauranga-lila. Because Prahlad Maharaj is badly abused in the same way. Tortured. His father tried to have him killed in multiple different scenarios. Bizarre scenarios, snakes and poisons and throwing off cliffs and trampled by elephants and attacked by spear-wielding rakshasas and everything. He tried everything to kill him. and he was protected by Vishnu. And so it seems that there's the parallel is seen there between the life of Haridas Thakur and the life of Prahlad Maharaj.
Is that actually who Haridas Thakur is? His other identity is Prahlad Maharaj?
Yeah, there's two. There's I think is Lord Brahma and Prahlad Maharaj are both given. Different places. Just like with Advaita Acharya, you have Sadashiva and Mahavishnu are both given. There's different perspectives, ways of seeing it. It's a flexible spiritual perspective. Doesn't necessarily fall always inside the parameters of logic, as we would like to understand things, making sense. Under physical law, doesn't always obey physical laws. It's of a spiritual nature. Yeah, like Advaita Acharya, like also Swarup Damodar and Ramananda Roy. Generally, I think in Gaura Ganadesha Deepika it's given as Ramananda Roy is Vishakha and Swarup Damodar is Lalita. But in another place it's flipped around. Ramananda Roy is Lalita and Vishakha becomes Swarup Damodar.
Advaita Acharya is 50%, Mahavishnu 50%. It's like down the middle, like a bit to the side.
Is that the Jaigaranga commentary?
Yeah.
That's it. Jaigaranga's Bhasya.
Yeah.
Could be, who knows? I don't know. It doesn't logically make sense because we go, oh, they're that person, fully incarnated as this person. That's the logical reasoning perspective. But if you say they're this person, but they have a tinge of another person, it can depend on the perspective of the person. Also like Gadadhar Pandit is described as Rukmini, but as Radharani as well. Mm-hmm. So when someone asked Srila Sridhar Maharaj that, he said, well, because of the mood of Rukmini is there sometimes in the behavior of Gadadhar Pandit. So that can be seen as someone, an author, a Vaishnav author, or someone who's observed and written such and such with such and such in Vrindavan Leela, such and such in Gauranga Leela, with such a person in Vrindavan Leela. They're observing some kind of parallel. They're not necessarily stating it as literal truth. So Guru Maharaj says that Gadadhar Pandit is not an incarnation of Rukmini, but because he displayed some of the passivity that Rukmini displayed in her mood and nature, then the comparison has been given.
Can you remind us who was Rukmini?
Rukmini is one of the chief Dwarka queens of Krishna. So that submissive, passive attitude was displayed by Rukmini. Guru Maharaj describes it as Vama and Dakshina, kind of like assertive and passive. So, for instance, Jagadananda is seen as Satyabhama, which is assertive, whereas another Dwarka queen. Whereas Rukmini is a different nature, it's passive. Like Chandravali and Radharani, passive, assertive. So Guru Maharaj explained it in that way, that there's a similarity of mood. So it could be understood in that way. There may be other nuances as well, in which could inform one's perspective. But yeah, the Chaitanya Bhagavat gives a more extensive description of Haridas Thakur's glories. And perhaps Krishnadas Kaviraj has mentioned here that he's not described all of the pastimes because he doesn't want to detract from the content or doesn't want to repeat what's in the Chaitanya Bhagavat and thus kind of detract from its unique contribution. Republish it. But there was also a snake, in this cave that he's living in, where he's visited by Maya Devi personified, who again attempts to seduce him. And she comes and she says, "Yeah, I am Maya Devi and I came here to test you." In that cave, on the banks of the Ganga, right? He's living there. And also in that cave is living a huge snake, like a massive poisonous snake. And it's described as having bright colors like red and yellow, like a multicolored, huge python type thing, and emitting a very foul smell. So he's living in the back of the cave and like stinking the whole cave. And other devotees would come round to visit Haridas Thakur, but they were scared of this. They're like, "Haridas, how can you live here with this snake? This huge poisonous snake living in the cave with you, emitting this like toxic, venomous type of smell." And they were like, you can try and get rid of it somehow. And Haridas Thakur said, "No, well, if it's inconveniencing or displeasing you, then the snake won't leave, but I will leave." So as soon as he said that, the snake comes slithering out and leaves the cave forever. And everyone's like, whoa, watching this big, poisonous, brightly coloured serpent leave. Because it was either him leaving or Haridas Thakur. And Haridas Thakur said, "I'm going to leave." But the snake said, no, I'll go. So sees the influence of a Shuddha Vaishnava even over other living creatures. Like Mahaprabhu in Jarikanda forest, overcoming the normal nature of a snake. A snake wouldn't normally give up its home like that so easily. He just leaves. Yeah, there are other pastimes of Haridas Thakur. He was one of the older associates of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, perhaps the oldest. Maybe about the same age as Advaita Acharya. So they were, the time Advaita Acharya was like a lot older, like he was, most of this time, around this time, he was perhaps in his 70s. When Mahaprabhu was born, he was perhaps in his 50s. So in Mahaprabhu's youth, he was already getting old. And Haridas Thakur was about the same age. So there were maybe 2 generations older than Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So that's why coming up we will have the passing of Haridas Thakur, which is in a couple of chapters after this. When Haridas Thakur passes away, which is also a very kind of a sad but beautiful Leela, where Mahaprabhu gets directly involved in the funeral arrangements, celebrations of Haridas Thakur, and personally carries him, personally buries him, entombs him in the sand, where the samadhi is still there, near the beach in Puri, where Vishakadeti is now, or was a couple of days ago, at that very place. So, Haridas Thakur, maybe we will finish this chapter then. Also, Haridas Thakur would chant very, very loudly, like he would walk around almost yelling the holy name constantly, purifying the whole environment. So it's text 252. Mahabhagavata tumi tomara darshane, tomara Krishna nama kirtana shravane. Chitta shuddha haila chahe, Krishna nama laite, Krishna nama upadeshi kripa kadamote. My dear sir, you're the foremost devotee. Simply seeing you and hearing you chant the holy name of Krishna has purified my consciousness. Now I want to chant the holy name of the Lord. Please be kind to me by instructing me about the ecstasy of chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Chaitanya Avatare Vahe Premamrita Vanya Jai Gurudev Sabha Jiva Preme Base Prithvi Hailadanya. There is now a flood of eternal nectar of love of Godhead due to the incarnation of Lord Chaitanya. All living entities are floating in that flood. The entire world is now thankful to the Lord. Evanyaya yena base se jivachara koti kalpe kabutara nahi kanistara. Anyone who does not float in this inundation is most condemned. Such a person cannot be delivered for millions of kalpas. Purve ame Rama nama panchahi shiva haite tomara sange lobha haila Krishna nama laite. Formerly I received the holy name of Lord Ram from Lord Shiva, but now, due to your association, I am greatly eager to chant the holy name of Lord Krishna. Mukti hetu kataraka haya Rama nama Krishna nama parakahana kare premadana. The holy name of Lord Ram certainly gives liberation, but the holy name of Krishna transports one to the other side of the ocean of Nishants, and at last gives one ecstatic love of Krishna. Krishna nama deha tumi more karadanya amare basaya yaiche e premavanya. Please give me the holy name of Krishna and thus make me fortunate, so that I also may float in the flood of love of Godhead, inaugurated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Etabali vandila haridasera charana, haridasa kahe kara Krishna sankirtana. After speaking in this way, Maya worshipped the lotus feet of Haridas Thakur, who initiated her by saying, just perform the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Upadesha pana maya chalila hana prita e sabha katate karo na janme pratila. After thus being instructed by Haridas Thakur, Maya left with great pleasure. Unfortunately, some people have no faith in these narrations. Pratita karite kahe karana ihara yanhara shravane haya vishvasa sabara. Therefore I shall explain the reasons why people should have faith. Everyone who hears this will be faithful. Chaitanya Vatare Krishna Preme Lubdhahana Brahma Shiva Sankari Prithiviti Janmiya. During the incarnation of Lord Chaitanya to inaugurate the Krishna consciousness movement, even such personalities as Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and the four Kumaras took birth upon this earth, being allured by ecstatic love of Lord Krishna. Krishna Nama Lana Nache Prema Vanyaya Base Narada Praladadi Ase Manusya Prakashe. All of them, including the great sage Narad and devotees like Prahlad, came here as if human beings, chanting the holy names of Lord Krishna together and dancing and floating in the inundation of love of Godhead. Lakshmi Adi Kare Krishna Preme Lubdhahana Nama Prema Asvadila Manusye Janmiya. The goddess of fortune and others, allured by love of Krishna, also came down in the form of human beings and tasted the holy name of the Lord in love. Anyera kakata apane brajendra nandana avatare karena prema rasa asvadana. What to speak of others, even Krishna, the son of Nanda Maharaj, personally descends to taste the nectar of love of Godhead in the form of chanting of the Hare Krishna. Maya dasi prema mage iti ki vishmaya sadhu kripa nama vina prema na janmaya. What is the wonder if the maidservant of Krishna, his external energy, begs for love of Godhead? Without the mercy of a devotee and without the chanting of the holy name of the Lord, love of Godhead cannot be possible. Chaitanya Goshanira Lilara E Tavas etas svabhava, tribhuvana nache gaya pana prema bhava. In the activities of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the three worlds dance and chant, having come in touch with love of Godhead. This is the characteristic of his pastimes. Krishna Adi Arayata Stavara Jangame, Krishna Preme Mata Kare, Krishna Sankirtane. The holy name of Krishna is so attractive that anyone who chants it, including all living entities, moving and non-moving, and even Lord Krishna himself, becomes imbued with love of Krishna. This is the effect of chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Swarupa Gaushani Kara Chaya Ye Lila Likila Raghunatha Dasa Mukhya Ye Sabha Sunila. I have heard from the mouth of Raghunath Das Goswami all that Swarup Damodar Goswami recorded in his notes about the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Se Sabha Lila Kahe Sankshepa Karya Chaitanya Kripate Likhi Kshudra Jiva Hana. I have briefly described those pastimes. Whatever I have written is by the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, since I am an insignificant living being. Haridasa Thakurera Kahilun Mahimara Kana Yanhara Shravani Bhaktera Judaya Shravana. I have described but a fragment of the glories of Haridas Thakur. Hearing this satisfies the oral reception of every devotee. Sri Rupa Raghunatha Padeyara Asha Chaitanya Charitamrita Kahe Krishna Dasa. Praying at the lotus feet of Sri Rupa and Raghunath, always desiring their mercy, I, Krishnadas, narrate Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, following in their footsteps. So the Chaitanya Charitamrita was written based on information given by Raghunath Das Goswami when he left Jagannath Puri after Mahaprabhu passed away. Raghunath Das Goswami was serving under Swarup Damodar Goswami. We'll read about it soon. Or have we already read about it? No, we haven't. No, it's in the later chapters. What?
Mahaprabhu's disappearance.
No, not Mahaprabhu's disappearance. That's not given here. Raghunath Das Goswami coming to Jagannath Puri, leaving home, coming to Jagannath Puri. The chapter on Raghunath Das Goswami. I haven't come to it yet. We're still in chapter 3. So then, but he's told to serve under Swarup Damodar. So for 16 years or so, he stays at Puri. 16 or 18 years, Raghunath Das Goswami is staying at Puri. Under Swarup Damodar. Serving under him. And Swarup Damodar is keeping notes. He keeps a diary called the Kadacha. Extensive notes. And all of these are memorized as like a story can be memorized by Raghunath Das Goswami, who then after the disappearance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he goes to Vrindavan and living in Vrindavan as Krishnadas Kaviraj, and he tells them all of this. Krishnadas Kaviraj writes it all down. He arrives. They've already got the Chaitanya Bhagavat there at this time in Vrindavan. The community of devotees there. The Sad Goswamis. Sorry?
What did you say?
They already have the Chaitanya Bhagavat by Vrindavan Das Thakur. So they're reading that. But they realize it doesn't give enough information about certain other parts of Mahaprabhu's life, particularly the later parts in Jagannath Puri. Because Vrindavan Das Thakur wasn't there. He hears some from other people. Like he is a nephew, the grand nephew of Srivas Pandit. Yeah. His mother was married and then her husband passed away. And then there's somehow she got pregnant again and ended up giving birth to Vrindavan Das Thakur. It was a bit of a scandal apparently. But anyway, but she was kind of ostracized from the community because of that, It was considered socially inappropriate. But then she was taken in, so she was just a young mother, single mother, which, like it's common these days, but back then in that culture it was unacceptable. But she was taken in by, who took her in? Someone, Pundarik Vidyanidhi, or someone, took her in and helped her, like financially, etc., bringing up Vrindavan Das Thakur. And then when Vrindavan Das Thakur was young, he was picked up by Nityananda Prabhu. And of course, then under the instruction of Nityananda Prabhu, he authored the Chaitanya Bhagavat at Dainur. It just goes to show that what is considered, socially unacceptable circumstances does not necessarily impact the descent of the spiritual. The spiritual energy is not impacted. It doesn't have to obey social concepts of appropriateness, social customs, concerns that are deemed moral or immoral. Spirituality doesn't have to obey such laws in its descent. And that is why when someone asked, who did they ask? Mahaprabhu, perhaps. Why is it that sometimes Vaishnavas appear to be born in disadvantaged situations that are, from a mundane measure, inauspicious? And the reply was that to show that the descent of the spiritual energy, the appearance of devotees, it doesn't have to obey material rules and laws. It's above that. It acts independently of that. So regardless of the situation, it can express itself in this world, independent of what is deemed auspicious or inauspicious, inconducive circumstance. The nature of Krishna and his descent is swatantra, independent. But generally speaking, a devotee will come in circumstances that favour their continued spiritual journey, in circumstances that favour their progression of their path, their further progress on the path. That's what the Bhagavad Gita says, at least. If someone, it's a little different than the descent of a pure devotee, but if someone is on the spiritual path, they don't quite make it in one life, then Krishna says that there's no loss in that circumstance, because they'll be born into a circumstance in which they can just resume from where they left off, continue the journey. They will be born into a favourable scenario. And whatever progress they've made in the past, that's not lost. That's there, saved in the bank account. So the new circumstance, the new life, simply builds on progress that they've made in a previous life. But another reason, and so like Haridas Thakur was born in a Muslim family, it's said that he was a convert, and it's an example of how the descent of spiritual truth doesn't obey material custom, doesn't need to obey considerations of a social, moral, so what is deemed materially fortunate, doesn't have to obey any of that.
He was born in a Muslim family, but was it Brahmanical, we can't say, but the equivalent of a Brahmanical family?
I don't know. I don't think there's much written on it.
Or of a very
I heard
pious family?
don't know. Like I said, he's an older generation. So perhaps that would make it less likely that his immediate ancestry would be more known, because they would have already passed away by the time these biographers are writing their stories. The history is being documented, but it's not immediately observable, because he's like 2 generations older. So his parents, his ancestry, even if he chose to speak about it, would be less known. No one would be able to meet them. They would have already passed on. I mean, I did hear someone say that, and I don't even know the source of it, that his family were Brahmins that had forcibly been converted to Islam. But I don't know what the veracity of that is. We do know that he came from some Muslim background. Whether they were recent converts or converts of 200 years before, or whether they were immigrants from wherever the Muslims were coming from at that time, Iran or whatever, we don't know.
One more question about him. To summarize what happened to him concerning those women who approached him. I'm sorry if I missed the point. First it was that prostitute. The second woman was Maya Devi herself. But on a mundane level, where was she coming from? She was also coming from Ramachandra.
No,
she wasn't.
It doesn't. Does it say where she was coming from? I don't.
She just showed up.
She just showed up like this, out of nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, if someone is of that power, when it's like Maya Devi, a goddess, they can kind of move around at will, I'd imagine. If she's in control of the whole material domain, then they're her laws, and they're her laws to be broken if she wants.
But what was her intention?
Ultimately, to show that the devotee of Krishna is above the Mayic domain.
Okay.
That even Maya Devi herself has no influence in terms of bending the resolve, in terms of overpowering or alluring the devotee of Krishna.
And after this episode with Maya Devi, did Haridas Thakur go through other challenges? Not challenges, but or this is, or that was the last thing before they beat him in public?
I don't know the exact chronology, but it may have happened before or afterwards. It's hard to know the exact chronology, because these pastimes are given in Chaitanya Charitamrita probably because they're not given or are not given in detail in Chaitanya Bhagavat. That's the reason they're given here. So, because the fact that they're given in 2 different books, it's hard to match or to make a chronological order.
Okay.
They're just included here. In fact, the chronology is given less importance in Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's more the content is given importance. Although there is a basic chronology. I mean, of course, we have Adi, Madhya, and Antya, right? Beginning, middle, and end.
But inside each of them...
Yeah, inside each of them is generally chronological in order. But in terms of this chapter and regarding Haridas Thakur pastimes and how they relate chronologically to the pastimes given in Chaitanya Bhagavat, not so much. And also, like we've talked before, how some chapters are mixed up because he wanted to get them on paper as quickly as possible. And also another area where Mahaprabhu is journeying in South India, and Kaviraj Goswami makes the specific point that he's not doing it chronologically. He says, don't try and figure all this out chronologically, because Mahaprabhu was going this sometimes and he was backtracking and going off to the side, and he's saying, I'm recording all the major incidents, but I can't guarantee their chronological accuracy.
And Haridas Thakur was then thrown in the Ganges after and after that he came out. Yeah,
he floated down the Ganges for a little bit and then came out. He exhibited as if dead, but then re-entered. You can say maybe the soul left the body for a little while or whatever. The symptoms of life left. So they threw the body in the Ganges, in the Ganga, and it floated down. He re-entered his body and came out, continued his life.
And the circumstances of his real death, did you read it?
No, that's later. We're talking about that, how Mahaprabhu himself gets involved in the funeral.
That's what you said.
He passes away like right in front of Mahaprabhu. It's a very touching pastime. But we'll get to it soon. It's not too far along.
I know you said it before, sorry.
Yeah. But he did get persecuted because he was the first. Even before Mahaprabhu was starting the Sankirtan movement, Haridas Thakur was loudly chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And he was being harassed for that, particularly because he was seen as like a Muslim converting to the faith of the Hindus, as it was seen. So he was seen as like a traitor. Or a particularly, like a treasonous, dangerous element, that the last thing they wanted was the Muslims converting to a different faith. So Haridas Thakur was seen as a dangerous element. And so he was also put in prison, in addition to being beaten. Before that, he was put into prison. They put him in prison. And he converted all the jail inmates in prison. They were all converted.
He would chant the Mahamantra.
Yeah.
Is that why Haridas Thakur just couldn't go to the Jagannath temple, because he could tell from his appearance that he was a Muslim?
No, he chose not to. It's not as if he could have tried if he thought he would have gotten away with it, if he thought he could have slipped by. But he chose not to, because they knew the rules. They didn't want to break those rules. That's why also Rupa and Sanatan chose not to, because they were considered sort of Muslims in a sense, or at least they were considered contaminated in some way due to their association, their employment in the Muslim government. So they chose not to. It's not as if they didn't want to. It's not as if they didn't want to. It's not as if they wanted to and couldn't get in. It's not as if they tried and couldn't get in, or were contemplating how to get in but decided not to, thinking that they'd probably get caught or something.
So wouldn't be like, why would try to get in, they could be like, oh, no, not Hindu.
Yeah, I mean, you can, other people can sneak in these days if they want to, but if they don't want to follow the example of Haridas Thakur and Rupa and Sanatan, they can try and sneak in. I mean, you could easily sneak in. You could put on brown paint and go in. Dye your hair or something. Jagannath, into the Jagannath temple. There's this one lady who had kind of olive skin, American lady, and she had an Indian friend, and they just walked in, and the guys were like looking at this other lady. She could have passed for like Punjabi or Northern Indian or something. But she walked in and the lady said to the guys at the door, "Oh, she's doing Mona," which is like a vow of silence. She's doing a vow of silence. Don't try and speak to her.
And it all worked?
Yeah, it worked.
Wow.
Yeah. And then there's another girl in New Zealand that I know. What is her name? Leela. And she has like brown. She's brown. I don't know how she got brown, because her parents aren't brown. She's not super brown, but she, I think, maybe is what do they call it, recessive gene or something, because one of her siblings is kind of olive skinned too. But she went in. She just dressed up like a little Indian girl and kind of just tagged along with the group and went in. So it's been done, and there's quite a few stories around actually of people they're thinking it's kind of some kind of almost like a righteous act to go in and see Jagannath, to sneak in and see Jagannath.
Another Guru from Australia, his wife is Japanese.
Yeah.
And so she passes from Manipur.
Okay.
So she could speak Bengali, so she just walked on in with Mohan.
Yeah. I think it's probably pretty easy to do. The amount of people going in and out of that temple is colossal. So if you dress up and you look, they can't check everyone. If you dress up and you look kind of the part, then they can't start. I mean, they don't know if you're a Muslim or not. A Muslim can just look like an everyday pilgrim and walk in. So it's impossible to enforce. But if you're blatantly Western, they'll probably try and stop you. Or they will definitely try and stop you. And they'll probably, if you manage to get in and you get busted, then they'll beat you.
Oh, yeah.
Probably not too bad, because they're not, they got these kind of bamboo sticks and maybe, I mean, you never know. Maybe it could be a pretty bad beating, but.
You were asking if Haridas Thakur or Rupa or Sanatana could have entered, even though they were not Hindu, but just because of their physical aspect. But they didn't try. None of them.
Yeah, I mean, they could have. I'm sure they could have gotten. Maybe they could have gotten in. I mean, back in those times, there weren't quite that many pilgrims going in, so it was probably known. Mahaprabhu and his associates were probably pretty well known. In Puri. It's not a big city. Particularly then, it was pretty much the temple and surrounding residential and shopping areas. So it's not like a big metropolis. Not even now. What to speak of 500 years ago. So Mahaprabhu and his associates were probably pretty well known. People knew about each other. People knew if you were a Brahmin or not. People would have known that they were... particularly if they were the top guys in the Muslim government of Bengal, that wouldn't be not known. And Haridas Thakur, everyone knew he was a Muslim, and an older man, Namacharya. So, I mean, they wouldn't have tried to disturb the peace there by lobbying to get entry into the temple, into the Jagannath temple. But also there's a special side of it, because if you can't go in during normal time, then Rath Yatra is all the more special. Mm-hmm. That's what makes Rath Yatra so special for Westerners. Part of the reason why it's so special. Because you can't see Jagannath at other times. And you get to see Jagannath at that time. Sometimes you can even climb up. I climbed up on the cart last time I was there.
Shabanda was sort of prayed to that, and they got to hug Jagannath.
Yeah, I remember. Did they actually say they were hugging Jagannath? Yeah. I don't think that sounds unlikely. I remember Isha telling me some thing that they got close to Jagannath. Yeah, there was I forget. I managed to climb up and see Lord Jagannath very close, like from here to that light away. Looking at big Jagannath. Sorry?
How did it feel?
Good. It felt very special. I felt like I was a special dude. Which is how I should have been, like saying, seeing how special Jagannath was. But I was thinking I was a special guy.
That's fun.
Not quite, but a little bit like that. Because you get a bit overwhelmed by the moment and think, I'm so blessed.
Uh-huh.
But it was nice to be that close to Jagannath. And then a punda comes walking around the corner. He's like, "Oi! Oi!" And I was told if you see the pandas, basically you just give them some money, and that's they see it as an opportunity to give them some money, and they'll be right. So I had a pocket full of 100 rupee notes. I pulled out a 100 rupee note. Yep, here, there you go. And he was like, "What is this?" And I'm like, "What does he mean? What is this? Is it not enough, or Is he offended that I'm trying to bribe him? Or I don't know. But anyway, a couple more arrived, and I thought it was time to go, so I climbed off back down the side. But I think you can go up. Like I remember when Ishabandhu was there, I'd have to speak to him to get the details of it again, but he was telling me that there was this one ISKCON Swami called Indradumna Swami was there. And I think you can arrange for a fee, probably a fairly significant fee by Indian standards, to be escorted to go and see Jagannath up close. I think that's how it works. But I don't know exactly what happened with Isha and Stadu. I mean, maybe they did get to hug. It sounds... I haven't really heard of that happening, but maybe they did. Yeah, okay. Lord Jagannath. But it's all the more special, if you can't see Jagannath every day, you can't just walk into the temple, you can see him at Rath Yatra. Definitely makes it more special. Yeah. So we'll read a little bit here. Revealed Truth, the Formula for Harmony. Did we read that one? You read that one? Formula for Harmony. Trinadapi Sunichena Torari Vaseshnuna. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given us the supreme formula to collect the good qualities of others, properly relate to everyone and harmonize everything. Trinadapi Sunichena Torari Vaseshnuna. Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari. Within his formula, Mahaprabhu gave us 3 very nice rules. Trinadapi Sunichena. Be humble and do not disturb anyone. If we are humble, then we will not be a cause of anger for others, and everyone will be merciful to us. Torari Vasahishnuna. Tolerate everything going on in this mundane world. We are insignificant souls. We should not demand so much for ourselves. If we are tolerant, then we will not make any unnecessary disturbance for ourselves or others. And that way we will avoid the sinful reactionary environment. Amanina manadena. Give honor to everyone without desiring honor for yourself. Everyone has some ego, and we do not want to disturb others' egos. We should humbly give honor to everyone, even to persons who are not honorable. Everyone has some good qualities, so why should you not give honor to them? What is the difficulty for us? If we give honor to everyone, then everyone will be happy with us, and not only will they not disturb us, but they will help us in our practicing life. The conditioned souls always think that they are already qualified. That is their misfortune. When someone sees himself as the biggest, he cannot see anything beyond himself. He can only see tiny things like ants and insects. When someone sees himself clearly and feels himself to be small, then he can see the highest and the biggest things around him. It is hopeful for us to see ourselves not as the best or greatest, but as the least and the smallest, to see that we have a great need for improvement. Whatever good qualities we may have are already our property, which no one can take away from us. If we see good qualities anywhere in others, we should try to collect them. We can always collect goodness from wherever we find it through our practice of humility, tolerance, and giving honor to others. Jai Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev-Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Hari Hare Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha. Hare Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha. Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha. Gopala Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudana. Gopala Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudana. Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohana. Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Chandra Radhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Koshai Kori Charana Bandana Hoite Bignana Sabista Purana Echai Koshai Andramuni Tanradasa Kansabara Pararenu Moda Panchagasa Andara Charana Sehi Bhakta Sane Vasa Janame Mora Hey Abhilasa Echai Koshai Tabbe Praje Koilo Vasa Radha Krishna Antya-lila Gaurila Prakasha Anande Bolo Hari Bhaja Vrindavan Shri Guru Vaishnava Pare Majai Aman Shri Guru Vaishnava Para Padma Kore Asha Hari Nam Sankirtan Kohe Naratham Dasa Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo Rama Ramo Hare Hare Nitai Gaura Hari Bo Nitai Gaura Hari Bo Nitai Gaura Hari Bo Nitai Gaura Hari Bo Jai Sabharikara Shri Guru Gauranga Sundar Radha Giridhari Ki Jai Jai Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev-Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Jai Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Rakha Sridhar Dev-Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Jai Vishnupad Bhagavan Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai Shri Rupanu Guru Varg Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Samveda Vaishnava Mandala Ki Jai Samveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat Ki Jai Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat West London Ki Jai Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai Kai Go Nandi Hari Bo